Hi, welcome to the Ambient iPad. Let's make some music. I'm going to use the same setup I used in the last improv. So for the Mellotron, I'm going to be using the mixed custom choir and two brass from the M400 sound set. I'm also going to use a percussion app called Ting, which uses a lot of everyday objects around the house. The signal chain is the Mellotron M4000D Mini. Its mono master analog output goes into a Focusrite Scarlett 18i8 interface, which communicates back and forth with an iPad Pro through a USB-C hub that also lets me power the iPad at the same time. I'm using apeMatrix for the setup here. This is actually a setup that I used in the last jam, Jam 52. For this jam, the piece is a little more composed, and to be completely honest, I've been practicing components of it and I never get any of it right. So typically my ideas outstrip the skills that I have on the keyboard, so there will definitely be a mistake or two in this. To be completely honest, I think in the entire time I've been playing music and recording, I don't think I've ever done anything where there's not at least one or two mistakes in there. And, you know, it's a cliche, but the adage is you just don't stop, just keep playing, because most people wouldn't ignore it. But since I've said that there's going to be some mistakes, most likely they'll probably stick out like a sore thumb. So let me walk through the effects quickly, and then we'll get to Ting by Klevgr, which is a percussion instrument that I'm using along with the Mellotron in this jam. So what I've got to do, though, is turn a lot of this stuff off, and then I'll turn it back on. So we've got the Bleass Compressor. I just use a basic setting and tweak this to my liking. It's really what I'm comfortable with, which is settings for the bass. Then we've got FAC Chorus. This is a pretty mellow chorus, and the mix is below 50%. So the two of these together sound like this. And that's a layer of the two sounds that we're using for this jam. The mixed custom choir and two brass from the Mellotron M400. In the last video, which I'll link down below, I did walk through all the different choir sounds that you can get with the M400. Let's move on. We'll go to the delay right now, K7D, Imaginando. I have a basic tape delay I've set up, and then I turn on ping pong just to widen the stereo field. So I'm demonstrating these in parallel, but we will route them in series. So here's the compressor, the chorus, and the delay. And I mentioned this before, when you're playing legato, the delay acts as a reverb as well. But we do have a reverb here. We have the audio Damage Adverb2, which is a plate reverb. I just have a basic setting on here too. Let's add that in with everything else. Just a little. It's not really over the top. Then I've got Perferator from Bram Bos. So this is think of it like a gating effect. It adds a little bit of rhythm that you can set up graphically here. So here's all the effects with Perferator. Now the thing with Perferator is when you're running in parallel, you can't really hear it that well. So I'm going to reroute everything now in series, and you'll hear the difference. So we want the compressor to go through FAC Chorus going through, going through the delay, keep hitting that, wrong, the delay. Then we want the delay going through the reverb, and then we want the reverb going through Perferator, and Perferator we want to also go through Spatializer. So when I open up Spatializer here, I'm using front and back, which is what I always use. Just adds a little more depth to the stereo field, nothing else. All right, and then we want that through there. So let's hear, this is all the effects through in series and all ending up through Spatializer. So Perferator will be a little more noticeable this time. And that's the basic setup that I'm going to use as far as the effects go. I will start without Perferator and we'll add Perferator later. Let me move over to Ting right now, and actually I'm going to just move over to the app so I can demonstrate it. Ting requires another app to trigger it other than obviously the pads, but and I'm using Rozeta X0X, which I'll show that when we get back into apeMatrix. So Ting is just, for the most part, everyday objects around the house. You got silverware, your finger slapping against the table, your hand slapping against the table with a ring, fork and knife, another fork and knife, a fork on a cup, a couple of plates, a knife sawing on a cup. So, a sofa slap, table fist, thumb tapping on the table, and of course, finger snap. So, as you can see, it's not your traditional percussion. It's kind of everyday objects and your hands. But it actually gives you some really, really interesting sounds. And I'm just gonna open up Ting here. As I mentioned before, I've got Rozeta X0X from Bram Bos, which is triggering. I created a drum line, and it will trigger Ting. So let's hear what that sounds like, and I'll just switch back and forth between the two percussion sets I'm going to use. So let me keep that going, and I'll just do some stuff over it. Turn off Perferator for a second here. That's it for the most part. We've got our effects, we've got the Mellotron, we've got Ting. Again, some of the stuff I just played is what I'm going to be using in the improv, so let me readjust the camera and we'll get this jam going. I use the same setup as I did in the last improv, so for the Mellotron I use the mixed custom choir and 2 brass from the Mellotron M400 sound set. I use the same effects in apeMatrix, so I use some compression, some chorus, a little bit of tape delay from K7D, plate reverb from Audio Damage's Adverb2, used some gating effects with Bram Bos Perferator, and ran all that through Spatializer, which just added a little more depth to the stereo field. I also used Ting, which is a great and interesting percussion app that relies on samples from objects around the house, and I demonstrated that: forks, knives, plates, hitting your hand against the sofa, a box, etc. But as you heard, you can get some really cool and interesting percussion lines that really don't sound out of the ordinary. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.